I right now hand over to Brother Justin. He doesn't need a extra introduction. He's been doing this Bible study for quite some time. Today we had this short conversation about a few people, and like both of us, I feel, are not in a great mood to take the class. The reason is because we just had gone to UP and we just spoke to a few people, and one of them went to be with the Lord, and that kind of disturbed us. But yeah, even in the midst of all this, I want to thank Justin, who has enabled himself to join in here. I request to Justin, Brother Justin, to please continue from here.
Good evening. Thank you all for joining today's session, and thank you, Church, for giving me this opportunity to minister to you. And really thank God for what He has been doing in our lives. And as He said, yes, we had a shocking news today, but by God's grace, we are expecting the family, because that family lives in very poor conditions, and also they have 3 girl children, and mother is the only son. Mother was the only one who was earning for the family, and we were praying for that family and that person, but let Lord's peace be with them. Ask Church's prayer for that family, that God may continue to heal them, and also the family may be comforted in these troubled times, and also the church in Lucknow. As we were doing today's, I was sharing with you the how to understand different writings of the Bible. So I had gone through Gospels and parables last week. I will be going through 2 another forms of writings that we find in New Testament, and then move forward in the rest of the classes or in the days to come. So as you all know that these are different, we came to know that Gospels are a different kind of writing. Basically, it talks about it has a style of ancient biographies, how in ancient times biographies was written. That is the form which was used in the gospel writing, and that's what we saw. And how also in the historical context, how in those days the teachers used to teach, and the basic form in that we saw was parables, that they use some short stories or illustrations to help to understand the truth which is presented by the side of it. So we have to know that in order to understand the conditions, and also to understand correctly and interpreting the word correctly. Some of the historical understanding, historical details that we have will help us to understand the portions of the Bible that we are reading, and that will help us to understand it more correctly and in line with what the author or the writer of that gospel or that particular writing wanted to convey to us. So today we will go into 2 other sets of writing that are there in the New Testament, and we will be looking at we will understand how these writings are to be understood. So when we come to New Testament, there are 2 more writings that we see, or we have to understand that when the church was established, and when the church was furthered by the apostles, and how the church came into being, and we all know that stories, and we all know the beginning of the church, and from the Acts of the Apostles we understand how do we understand and how the formation of church happened. And from that day onwards, the apostles were the one. The Gospels, we see Jesus doing Jesus's story, and we understand Jesus's story. But in the Gospels, we see, but in the epistles, when you come or when you see the further writings, apostles were the ones who were writing these writings. Though the Gospels were also written by the apostles itself, but now we see that the church has been formed, and this is a very new movement that have started, and how to cope up. And now not only the Jews or the people who understand the Old Testament or people who are Jewish from the Jewish culture, not just those people are coming to Jesus Christ, but there are other people also who are coming to Jesus. Now there are Gentiles, people from Gentiles. We are all part of Gentile group because we don't belong to a Jewish community. We are all Gentiles. So, these people started coming into faith. And how do we address the problems that are happening in the church? And how do we cope with the situation which the church is facing? So we see there are two kinds of writings that came during that time when the church was formed, and the apostles were ministering to these places, and they were going from churches to churches to make them understand what was there. So they, first of all, they don't have very much understanding of the Jewish text or Old Testament scriptures. So sometimes you see there is a lot of use of Old Testament text to the people who are coming from Jewish background, but at times there is no use of Old Testament text, especially the letter of Philippians. You will see that not even a single quote from Old Testament has been taken. There have been allusions that have been taken. There have been like examples or some things, the things which they want the church to understand. Some of those allusions are taken in the Philippians letter. We don't see that there is any other Old Testament text directly used in those scriptures. So we will understand those things. So these apostles are like forming the church, or putting the seeds of the church, and how they address these people, how they address the churches. That's what we see in epistles. And the one more writing that we see is the Revelation that we see. So how do we understand epistles? Now I will just give you a brief outline about what are these epistles and how do we understand them, and then go on. We will look into few of the verses from the epistles, so that we can understand how do we understand those and how do we use those texts. That also we will understand. So epistle, what is an epistle? How do you understand? It is basically a letter. Now we have lost the habit of letter writing in these days. We are an SMS generation, or even with the TikTok coming in, we are the 20-second or 30-second generation. Now our attention span is that much only. For 30 seconds or 20 seconds, that's where we stand now these days. But in the olden times, they were using, not even in the olden times, I used to, like in my time, my father was in South, like he used to work in Saudi. So we were three brothers, and we used to write letters to our father. Now till that time, when I was doing my schooling and I was like growing up, I used to write letter to my father, and there used to be sometimes, I know, if it is a 5 rupee inland letter, you have short space. So most of the space was taken by mama, and then we three brothers were given little bit of spaces to write, so that we can talk to our father. So that's where the letter writing on those days used to stand. But now with emails and also short messagings and the mobile technology that has come up, we are now we have loads of information. In those times, if the information has to be passed on, it took actually months to pass on the information. If my dad is saying that he is sick, after 1 month or 15 days only we'll get the letter that he's sick, and we will write back to him, are you okay? By then he's okay, he's working, and everything has happened. But by the time we receive the information, it is very, very late that we have received that information. So now these kind of information, how do you pass on, and how do you like how these letters were written? And we see where I was in previous days, I was reading this letter to the Philippines, where one person who carried some things for Paul, who was in the prison, he while he was taking the things or some goods or materials to help Paul in his prison, in his stay in prison, he at that point of time got sick, and he was on his almost he was about to die. And somehow church got to know that he is going to die, and church was worried over there. So Paul writes a letter to and sends it in the hand of this person who got sick, and he was on the verge of death. And he takes his letter back to his church, and that's where we see the background of the Philippians letter, and that's how the Philippians letter was written, and that's how we get the letter to the Philippians, which Paul wrote in those times. So that's how the information used to be passed on, and sometimes it takes time. And one of the things why I'm telling you all these stories, that these letters should be read in its complete sense. It should not be read chapter wise. It should not be read in just margins or just some blocks that you have read or some verses that you like. I know that Tiju has taken with you the verse, I can do all things. And we get very excited about these all things. Now, what is this all things basically? Or what is, so you have to read those letters completely in order to understand them. You have to read those letters that were written. Sometimes when you read, what is the problem with reading half of the letter? If somebody writes to you, you will read the letter completely. You will not read half of the letter. Now, sometimes some people will say that I was sick, and with reading that line, he will get all disturbed that this person is sick. But towards the end of the letter, it is written that I had gone to the doctors and I have now taken my medicines. Now I am fine. But if you're just responding to the portion, the first line where he wrote, I was sick, you're not able to get the complete picture of that letter. So in order to understand these letters also, the first thing that we have to do, now when you sit and when you study, it is not just the verses that you read, try to read the complete letter. Try to read, now some of the letters are bigger, you have to take much more time in order to complete that. And that's how letters are being kept in the Bible. It starts with longer letters in the beginning, and Paul's letters in the beginning, then it goes to the smaller letters and the letters written by other apostles that we see in the Bible. So these letters are actually friendly letters, as well as they are used for teaching. In those days, these letters were also used to teach, to tell the disciples something or tell some people something. This was like in those times when the teachers Greek teachers also used to write letters in order to teach their disciples. So this was a literary device that was used at that point of time, not just to write some friendly letter. It was not just restricted to write a friendly letter, but it was also written to teach, to instruct, or to tell them, to clarify something to the church. So it was written with a purpose to communicate information, with a purpose to teach, instruct, and clarify doctrine. So if there was any problem with the doctrines, if there was any difficulty in understanding something, these apostles used to write, or these teachers used to write letters to their disciples or to the new growing church in order to make them understand these things. And one of the things that we have to clearly understand, people of God, that these letters were written to real people at real possible given situations. No, these are not sometimes the letters were written just to give their philosophical understanding or philosophical ideas to the pupils. But these letters, when we see these letters are given in order to, there is some real situation that is happening in the church, and there is some real problem. If you see the letter to the Corinthians, you see that that church is facing many problems. No, it is not just, sometimes it is told that it is just the problem of division in the letter to the Corinthians. No, only the first 4 chapters, first letter to Corinthians, only the first 4 chapters deal with the problem of division. But there are several issues that you will see in that church, in that letter, when you read that letter, and there are several problems that you will come across. So these letters, not just like to make them understand some doctrine itself, or just to make their ideas presented to them, but the church was facing some real problems, and they were real people having real issues. That's why these letters were written, and that's why you see there is a lot of practical teaching that Paul gives in these letters, practical things that are written in these letters. And we have to understand those things. We have to understand what is the problem that the church is facing. Now, it is like, now we see that it is like just listening to one end of the conversation. Now, whenever my dad is on the call, mom will be in the behind and will be asking him, what happened, what is she saying, what is he saying, what is happening on the other side. So the curiosity that what the other person is saying from the other end, we have to understand this is just one end of the conversation. And it is not that we have to do a lot of guesswork in that, but when we read the text, we will understand that what is happening in the other end, what is happening in the church, and what is the problem that is being addressed in that particular situation. So we have to understand, we are just listening the one end of conversation, and sometimes we get too much driven, or sometimes we do a lot of guesswork which is not required. But we have to understand, when you read the letter, when you carefully read the letter, you will understand what is the problem that is happening in the church and how do we understand. And most of all, I want to tell you that these, again, I want to address that these are real problems that is happening in the church, or they are addressing the real things that are happening in the church. You know, what you see in Philippians chapter 2 about Jesus Christ, his coming to the earth, his incarnation, and talks about emptying himself. From verses 6 to 11, that you see that Jesus, who was equal to God, did not consider himself to be given, and he gave himself, he now emptied himself, that kind of understanding this is given. But you know, the context in which it comes is that some people in the church are not united, or their hearts are not united. So this whole concept of Jesus Christ's incarnation, or basically emptying himself and coming to the earth, is to make them understand how Jesus came to unite us, or how in the church we have to be united. We just don't have to look into our interests, but keep the interest of the others. When you come to Philippians, you know, I would like you to read and come to Philippians. Just I'm taking you to that portion, Philippians chapter 2. And when you come to verses 3 and verses 4, if anyone there can read Philippians chapter 2, verses 3 and 4. Yeah.
Philippians 1 now.
Philippians chapter 2, verses 3 and 4.
Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourselves. Each of you should look not only to your own interests, but also to the interests of others.
See, that is the background in which this letter, this whole, the idea of Jesus coming to the earth and why he came. In that context, like, you should consider others better than yourself. You should look into not only your own interests, but each of you into the interests of the others. And you see in chapter 4 that two of the members of the church, or a leadership capacity, two sisters of the church are fighting. There is an infighting in the church, and Paul is addressing to that infighting, that you just, and the whole the concept of Jesus coming down to the earth, just to explain, that you should not just look into your own interests, but look into the interests of the others also. Now you should not consider yourself, like he said, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility value others above yourself. How Jesus did that on the cross. How Jesus valued others more than himself. He did not come with a selfish ambition, and how Jesus valued them. So, and if you see verses 12 onwards in chapter 2, you will be able to understand that thing, that there also it is said that, continue to in verse 14 it says, do everything without grumbling or arguing. Now, in that context, this whole thing is being made out or explained about Jesus Christ, valuing others more than yourself, or looking into, when we also come into our own understanding, do we value others, or do we look into the interests of others than our interests? Now, in that, how Jesus have portrayed himself, how Jesus is presented, that is how it is explained in these portions, and they want to tell. I want to move ahead. Just for example, I was telling you this, like, even the big doctrines of Jesus emptying himself, or what we say in our language, kenosis, or Jesus's, the Trinitarian concept of Jesus is explained in the context of some practical thing that the church is facing, some practicality which the church is facing. And in those things, these doctrines are being explained, and Jesus is being presented over there. So we have to look into all those things when we are reading the letters, or we are trying to understand those letters when we see. So epistles, when you come there, or when you understand epistles, what do you have to see? That even in when you come across the problem that is happening to the Galatians, the circumcision issue that was happening, and how it happened when in the first missionary journey, Paul established the church in the Galatia, and after coming back, there are some more people, some Jewish people, who are trying to impose the Jewish law on those Gentile converts. And we see in Acts chapter 15, they are coming together and they are forming a council, and they are addressing those issues. And after that, we see Paul also writing the letters to Galatians, that who has, oh, you foolish Galatians. He's very, very much, he's kind of very much disturbed when this kind of thing is happening in the church, when some people are trying to take them away. He's not just demeaning the law itself, but there is some problem that has happened in the church, and that's how he's addressing the whole issue of Galatians, the whole issue that is there, that is happening in the church in Galatia. So that's where you understand these letters. When you go ahead, when you how do you understand them? How do you interpret them? How do you understand these epistles when you come to these things? Collect the background information. There are a few of the things that we can do, and that can help us to understand these things. Collect some of the background information that is there. The author, the reader, the date, the circumstances that are there, the problem the church is facing, the condition of the author, and the purpose of writing. These are few of the things that when it is written, what was the purpose of writing? Why it is written? And now all these things you might gather in order to understand that letter and the things that are happening in that letter. So understand the background information. Towards the end of the class today, I will give you 2 of the tools where you can get those, and that will help them to understand a particular writing or a particular letter that is being written. So you collect the background information, you collect who has written it, what is the purpose of writing it, understand the whole message before understanding the individual parts. You have to understand the complete message. Galatians, why is it written? About the circumcision law. Thessalonians, why it is written, the second coming. Some people were thinking that Christ has already come. There is an issue in the church. So people are worried what will happen to those who are already dead. Will they rise again, or will the resurrection happen in their life, or it is just who are living that Christ will take them? How do you understand this again? So in that context, the church is facing some difficulty, and that is being addressed in the Thessalonians. Corinthians, there are a lot of internal problems. Now, I sometimes, when I read the letter to the Corinthians, I get disturbed. No, why are the people like this? So why so much of problem in that church? And they are in the beginning only you will see that they are very gifted church. They speak in tongues, they prophesy, they are exercising all the gifts of the Spirit, and they are in unity. There is Lord's Supper that is happening, and everything is happening in the church. But the church is full of problems. You can do all the nice things and still have problems. That's what we understand from the letter to the Corinthians. You can do all the now I understand this. Sometimes people can be very gifted, does not mean that they don't have a problem or they don't have an issue. Now, gifts does not mean that you are completely all right or you are perfect. Sometimes we think that if you have gifts, you are perfect. The perfection is taken in that sense. But we see in Corinthian letters that even though they are gifted, they have all the gifts, but still there are a lot of problems that they face. Your child can be gifted, does not mean that he does not need correction. Don't think that if he's gifted, he does not need correction. Now, sometimes we think that he does all the good things, or he brings so much of good score, and he's like good in all these things, and he does not need correction, or he's a child prodigy and he does not need correction. No, that is not right. We have to understand that gifted people have also there is a need for correction in their life. They have to be corrected, and sometimes Paul is very much strong in his writing. Do you want me to come with a rod, or do you want me to come with love? That's how he is addressing some of the places. So that is one thing. And one other thing that we have to understand while interpreting these letters is that these recipients are averagely, Christianity is not that a big movement. It is not a worldwide movement at that point of time. It is a very young movement. It is just coming across. So people does not know many things like we know today. They are very young. They are very averagely informed about, even these people are averagely informed about the Old Testament laws and the scriptures that are there, and some of the problems that we see in the church. Sometimes we see, now we can go into accusing them and demeaning them and putting them down, but understand that they are very new to this movement. They are very new to this kind of setting, this kind of church, and they are facing problems. And sometimes when new people come, you see that there is a lot of problems. You see they are facing a lot of problems. But how do we make them understand all these things? How do we work with them? How do we exercise our patience with them? How do we work along with them? That we have to understand. So, and some of these letters, when you see, it was written down, but they were read orally in the church. These letters were written. So some of the styles that you see, that I am saying to you again and again, I'm saying this to you. And some of these letters were written to be read aloud in the church. So somebody will carry the church, usually the carrier or the person who is in charge of the church, he will read out this letter to the church, and they address specific problems of those times. There are a lot of underlining issues that are there, and in order, you just don't cut, copy, paste. Now we are sometimes a cut, copy, paste generation, where we cut, copy, paste the scriptures and then paste directly into our situation. No, let's understand what is the specific problem over there, and then we apply it to our times. Then we understand it to our times. Example is Corinthians. There are a lot of issues. They are specific to the church. They are specific to that church. So first, understand what is Paul addressing to them. What is he addressing to them about the food sacrifice to idols? And what is the situation over there when he's telling that? No, it is not just, you just cannot apply everything to our times, just what is prescribed or what is told over at that point of time. So we have to understand what Paul is trying to tell them, and then understanding those principles, we apply it to our times. No, here I will just take a short break in order to let you go through some of the verses in the letters in order to understand how do we address those things. So if there are not many people, but those who are there, I would request you to keep your Bibles with you when I ask you to read them and ask you to respond to those questions. Please help me out in understanding those passages, and we will work it together. How do we understand? Now, some of the common passages or common verses that we use, do we understand it in the way it should be understood, or do we need some more correction in those things? So when you come to Romans chapter 8, verse 28, can you come to Romans chapter 8, verse 28? It is our favorite verse. And can anyone read?
And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose.
Okay, we love this verse. No, God works for good for those who love him. Now, what do you mean by that? What do you understand by that? That, no, in everything, in all things, God works for good. What do you understand by that? When you read this verse, when you understand this verse, can anyone of you want to share like what this verse means, or what do we understand by this?
I mean, it might be that in any situation that we're put in, good or bad, God might just have a plan to work through it. Even if it's a bad situation, God might be working through that bad situation for a better situation for us.
Okay.
At the first reading, yeah.
All right. Good. Thank you. Sometimes we read, God works everything, all things good for those who love him, works out good for those who love him. But sometimes we miss the context or the verses that are written in the front or back. When you come to verse 29, it says, for those God foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his son, that he might be the firstborn among many brothers and sisters. No? What is the good thing that is happening here? Now, in all these things, sometimes we miss out on that God is conforming us to the image of his son. We always want good things to happen to us, or God will work out good things for us. But in this process, what God is doing is conforming us to the image of his son. How do we understand Jesus, or how conforming us to the image of his son, into the likeness of his son? and the process that he went through. Are we ready for that process? Are we ready to go through that process in which he's conforming us to the image of his son, into the likeness of Jesus? No, that's what we see over here. Are we no? Sometimes we see that he will work out all good things for us, but these good things, are we are we conforming more to image of Jesus, or are we just want good things, or good things to come to us? Same thing when you come to Ephesians chapter 3 verses 20. I want you to read Ephesians chapter 3 verses 20. Can anyone read for me Ephesians chapter 3 verses 20?
Now all glory to God, who is able, through his mighty power, at work within us to accomplish infinitely more than we might ask or think.
Yeah. Now it says, now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to the power that is at work within us. Now, what do we understand by this? What is, we quote this verse that he can do. Now you just ask for this much, he can do much more. You ask just for this verse, taking this verse, it says that now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than this. And we'll quote sometimes like, you are thinking very small. You should think not just about one room, 1 BHK house. You should think about 5 BHK house. Or is it that God is able to work immeasurably more within us? If anyone wants to comment on this, what do you understand by this verse? Can you help me to understand this verse?
It's not for the personal gains, but for the church.
It's not for the personal needs, but for the church. Okay. All right. Anyone else wants to add on to the thing over here?
Personal bhi aur spiritual bhi dono.
Personal bhi, spiritual bhi dono. Okay, very good.
Very good. Huh?
Through the Holy Spirit.
Through the Holy Spirit. Okay. What else? Few keen ears I have. Let's help me to understand this verse. Yes. Anyone else?
Like you said, we can just relate it to material things as well. Like Jesus said that ask and it shall be given unto you. So this just relates unto that, and the more that you ask, it is said that more will be given to you. So you can relate it to that as well and convince someone that like ask for 5 BHK. No, go along those lines as well.
Okay.
So this can be understood in that sense as well.
Thank you, Nikhil, for being honest. Yes, thank you. Actually, you have to, Paul is praying a prayer over here. You have to see if that prayer starts from verses 14. The prayer starts from verse 14. It says, for this reason, I kneel before my Father, from whom every family in heaven and earth derives its name. From verses 3, he starts praying a prayer. And then what is the prayer? It is a step-by-step understanding where he says that I pray that out of his glorious riches, he may strengthen you with the power through his Spirit in your inner being, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. And I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power together with all the Lord's holy people to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ, and to know this love that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of the God. And now to him who is able to do immeasurably. No? What he's trying to say is that prayer may, that Christ may. No, we never do. Do you want Christ to dwell in your heart more and more? Do you want to know about his love, the width, the depth, the understanding of his love? Now, do you want to to grow in his love? Do you want to be rooted in his love? And in that, he is praying now that God who is able to do immeasurably. If you want that in your life, that Christ should dwell in your heart, or your inner man may be strengthened. Now, all these things, when he says that in verse 16, that he may strengthen you with power through his spirit in your inner being, or your inner man be strengthened. We all want our outer man to be strengthened only. We never want our inner man to be strengthened. No, but this prayer, actually, we have to understand it in the context of the prayer that Paul is praying over there. That he wants you to be rooted in the love, to be built in the love of Christ, that Christ may dwell in your heart. And if we pray that kind of prayer, he will do all the more to help us and grasp us, because that is beyond our understanding. That is beyond our thinking what Christ can do in us. Now, sometimes we take this verse apart from it or out from it and use it at different places. Now, I was talking about today, we said that does Hebrews chapter 12 verses 1 talk about when you come to Hebrews chapter 12 verses 1, I would like you to draw your attention to Hebrews chapter 12 verses 1. Can anyone read that?
Hebrews 12:1, right?
Hebrews 12:1.
Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses to the life of faith, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up, and let us run with endurance the race that God has set before us.
Okay, so we read about something, a cloud of witnesses. That is it talking about somebody who is watching us when we are running this race? Does it talk about those kind of, is somebody watching us from heaven? And those witnesses, who are these cloud of witnesses? What are they talking about? Who are these clouds of witnesses? If I have to ask you, what will be your answer? Who is this cloud of witnesses?
The ones in chapter 11.
Very good. The ones in chapter 11. But what are they testifying? What are they testifying? These witnesses that means that they are testifying something. And what are they testifying?
As to how they were looking forward for the eternal glory.
How they are looking for the eternal glory. Actually, when you see this, when we talk about these cloud of witnesses, it is not just talking about like somebody, those who are watching a football match happening in the ground. No, there are a lot of witnesses and they are testifying about, and this is not like somebody who is testifying a football match that is going on in the ground. Yes, these witnesses talk about people who are mentioned in chapter 11, but what are they testifying? Now, what they have experienced, actually they are testifying God in their life. When God had called out in these people, they are testifying, and it is not just that they are seeing something, but they have experienced it in their life. They have known God. They are testifying about God. These cloud of witnesses, which is talked about, that they have, they are not just looking for the things that are there in the world, but the things when they walk with God, they are not just looking to Now, the places or the residences that we have around here, but they are looking for an eternal residence. They are looking towards an eternal residence. So they basically, when you talk about it, is not just they have witnessed or they are witnessing something. They want us. Now they are watching some match kind of a thing. It is not like that, but they are actually witnessing about God himself, that how they have experienced God in their life and how they testify God in their life. And that's how they are telling us that these cloud of witnesses, and how we should also run our race with perseverance, not looking at the things that is happening, or not just like entangling us with the sins that are happening around us, but to run the race with perseverance, the perseverance that happens. One last, or maybe one or two verses which I also want to say. Now, when do we read James chapter 1 verses 5? Can you come to James chapter 1 verses 5? When do we read James chapter 1 verses 5? Now, what is James chapter 1 verses 5? Can anyone of you read? There are a lot of other people who have joined. Please don't be just the witnesses, like you are watching some match in the stadium. Let us read it together. Yes.
If you need wisdom, ask our generous God, and he will give it to you. He will not rebuke you for asking.
Okay. Now, when do we read this verse? When do we quote this verse? This verse is used again. Yeah.
Exams.
Now, because March is the exam time, so I get to hear this verse a lot of times, especially during the exam times. I hear a lot of these, that any one of you, because you have not prepared and you want something, it is like एग्जाम हॉल में घुसने से पहले 10 रुपए का चंदा चढ़ा के जाऊंगा तो थोड़ा सा रियायत हो जाएगा करके ना. Sometimes we use it at that point of time, or when we are does wisdom, or does that thing talk about that? Can you read verse 2 also? James chapter 1 verse 2.
Consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds.
Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know the testing of your faith produces perseverance. When is this used? When do you need wisdom?
Trials and temptation.
And when do we use it? When do we use it? Exams. No? Trials and temptations में हमें कोई मतलब नहीं है wisdom के लिए ना. Like we don't need wisdom during when we go through. It talks about perseverance in that time. No, and when you are going through these trials, when your faith is being tested, and you have to persevere in faith. If any of you lacks wisdom, and then that changes the whole scene. It is good. It is okay that we quote it during the time of exam, but it is not that good to quote it in the time of exam. No? It is not about writing your exams, or no, it is talking about your perseverance in faith. That you have to persevere in your faith. You have to persevere when you face all kinds of trials in your life. At that point of time, you need God's wisdom to understand those things. No? And one final verse which came recently to me is Jude chapter. Jude has only one chapter. It is a small letter. Jude verse 9 when we read.
But even the archangel Michael, when he was disputing with the devil about the body of Moses, did not dare to bring a slanderous accusation against him, but said, "The Lord rebuke you."
Hmm. No, some people came to me, like they said that their pastor is telling this verse not to say anything against their pastor. So he's quoting from this place that even Michael, the archangel, did not say anything against Satan. So you should not speak against anything. So, no, how do you understand this verse? It is not that you have to speak against your pastor, or it is like I am encouraging you to speak against your pastor. Is it talking about that particularly? Actually, if you read the context of the book, well, I just want to go on here. If you read the context of the book, it is actually telling to be aware of those false people who are trying to defile the gospel. It is the whole context of the book tells us that it is speaking against, if you read verses 4, when you come to Jude 4, it says, for certain individuals whose condemnation was written about long ago have secretly slipped in among you. They are ungodly people who pervert the grace of God into a license for immorality and deny Jesus Christ, our only sovereign and Lord. It is talking about that some people have taken grace very cheaply, and they have made it a license for immorality, and they deny the Godhead or Lordship of Jesus in their lives. And these people have slipped among you, it says. These people, it is actually the whole context. It is completely talking against these kind of people. These people who have come in the church, who has slipped into the church. And the church has to be beware of those people. So all this exercise, why I'm taking you through this exercise, or why I'm like, we have to read it in the background of the letter or background of the text that is written over there. Some of the things that we understand or just quote it out of the text. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Can I fly? No, I cannot fly. No, but I can do all things. That does not mean over there that you can fly. No. So read it in the context of the letter that is written, the portion that is written, the big message of the Bible. So I will just once again come across to you. We are getting short of time. I just want to wrap it in a minute. And I would like to once again show you that what do we need to understand about when we are understanding these lessons. We have to see that you have to collect the background information. You have to know what is the background, what is the purpose of the writing of the gospel. You have to understand the whole message of the writing. You have to understand that, and then understand that these recipients are very new believers. Christianity is just a young movement at that point of time. We should not that they did this, they had to. Now it is not. We also go through these struggle. So we have to empathize and also correct ourselves in order to, when we go through all these situations. These are written orally. These are written, but they are orally told to the church. They are read before the church, all these letters, and they address specific problems within specific culture. So very specific problems. Don't just cut, copy, paste. They address very specific problems, and we have to understand what is happening at that point of time in order to get it right in our times. So these are some of the things. I wanted to share it later, but I just want to share one or two tools that are there, which we can get across. These are two books to help you understand and give you background information. You can take help of these two books. There's one IVP, Bible Background Commentary of New Testament by Craig S. Keener. It's a very good book. It verse by verse, it has explained the background of of those verses and the things that are happening over there. And one of the background information, you can see what is the purpose, what is the message, and all those things. How to read the Bible book by book. That is also a good. Now you take all the subscriptions of Netflix, and it is just for 1 month or 2 months, or Amazon Prime or Amazon and all these things. Just take time to invest. These are lifetime investments that you can do. So make those investments in these kind of books also, that will help you to understand the Bible as well. You invest a lot of things and a lot of different things. I request you to invest some of this. This will be a lifetime investment. No, this is not just a single lifetime investment. They will make you to invest. Now all these channels will make you invest for a year or 6 months. I tell you to invest just once, and it will be a lifetime help for you, and it will help you to understand some of the passages of the Bible. Make such good investments that will help us to grow. May God bless you all. If there are any questions, you can address those questions, and we can take it up.
Thank you, Brother Justin, for taking us through. As we study all these passages, and as we are studying as to how to read the Bible, sometimes there is these first thoughts that can come into all of you, like, is Bible so difficult to understand? Or is it required for us to read it that way? These are the basic common questions that can arise in each of your minds. Let me tell you one thing. The reason that we are supposed to learn how to read the Bible is because there has been a large number of group of people who have taught it the other way around. Okay, the wrong way. Okay, they have tried to pull things out from the position and taught in the wrong way. And that's the reason we need to know how to read the Bible. Okay, and not just use certain things in the way we want. Though it makes us feel good, though it makes us feel like pumped up as we say all these things, right? Especially as he took it from that verse from Ephesians chapter 3, right? When we talk about all these things, it is you ask this question: is it fine to ask financial things? It is okay. If you have a need, you can definitely ask. But when things are portrayed out, when we are always asking these kind of things, ideally you need to check into your own hearts. What is our desire? Right? Is our desire to be with the Lord, or is our desire in the earth? Okay, we cannot have desires in both. That is very clear. Okay, when we have desires, when we claim that we have desires in both, and we ask for things of this world, I'm not saying not to ask. When there is a need, definitely we all ask. We all open our mouths. The one who is teaching, the one who is listening, all of us do ask. But it is not the way the certain people have been putting across to us. So this is not to confuse you, or this is not to put it down in any form. It is just to take us through in that understanding as to how we all need to interpret. It is so important for all of us to interpret the Word of God rightly. Okay. I don't see any questions that anybody has asked. If you have any questions, you can unmute and ask also.
Yeah, just had one doubt. If I had to read about Paul's journey in the sequential sense of the journey, so like you said that the letters are arranged in the order of the volumes, the larger ones first and the smaller ones later on. If I am to read the letters in terms of his journey, is there a sequence, and how should I go about that?
See, in all these things, chronology does not matter as such. Like sometimes the dates also of these writings vary. So chronology is not, we have to know, like it will help us to understand when we read some of the things, that when was it written, what is the background of it, especially when you read Galatians, what is the background of it, and when was it written, will help you to understand it better. And there is no sweet sequence as such. We don't have to put it chronologically in order that we have to understand this, but they have put it in this way. The canon has put it in this way, so we read it like this. But what I am suggesting is, when you read these letters, try to read it completely. Try to understand as a whole, the message as a whole. It is which letter should be read first. That is not that much important, or it is not the point that I want to make over here. But when you read these letters, the point which I want to make is, when you read these letters, try to understand it completely, or try to read it completely when you are reading it. That will help you to understand the letter in a much broader perspective, and give you a better understanding to help you read that letter.
Well, thank you.
I hope that I was not able to audible. The voice was not that audible enough. Have I answered your question, or do you need
yes.
clarification?
Yeah, your audio is clear, Justin. It is clear.
Yeah, no, I was not able to hear the question properly.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, okay. Any other question?
You can always write back. I just want to say, you can always write back to Tiju, or if you have some questions during the course of the time, the 1 week that you read or go through some of the text, if you want to ask, you can always put it forward to Tiju, and he can let me know, or he can also help you to understand that those portions, or the things that we are taking in the class. And as Tiju, one more thing I just want to add, as Tiju said, that it is not to make everything difficult, but let us also, when I say not difficult, does not mean that you don't have to work an extra mile or work an extra step. No, when we come to all these things, sometimes we feel, oh, now why to bother go through all these things when I can do many other, like I can simply understand. The Spirit is helping me to understand. No, yes, Spirit will help you to understand. That's what we believe also. But take an extra step to know these things. Take an extra step to devote more time to help you understand. That will help you to understand text better and understand the scriptures better when you read it. So it is not, yes, difficulty, not to tell you that this is difficult, but if it is, even if it is difficult, I want you to struggle through those passages, to take time and extra effort to go through all those things.
Okay, there's one more question that has come. That is Ephesians chapter 4, verse 26. Can you explain Ephesians chapter 4, verse 26?
Ephesians chapter 4, verse 26. In your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry. Is that the verse you're talking about? Hopefully, that is the verse. Now it comes in a block of, it comes in the block of writing. We have to understand this text basically. When you read from verses 1, it talks about that God has given us this new life. We are being newly created in the image. We are new society of God, and we have new standards. There's a book by John Stott on. There's a commentary by John Stott where he has divided the book of Ephesians into 4 parts, where he talks about that new creation have new standards. That's what we see in chapter 4, verses 1. As a prisoner for the Lord, then I urge you to live a life worthy of your calling you have received. Now, that is the standards. These are talking about the standards with which a Christian has to live, and why these standards that has been explained in verses 20 onwards. When you read verse 20 onwards, you will see that verse 17 onwards, if you read, he comes again, he says, so I tell you this and insist on it in this Lord, that you must no longer live as Gentiles do in the futility of their thinking, but you have to live a life worthy of your calling. And then he goes on to explain about Jesus, what he did, that he has taken the old self and given you the new self. And that's where we come to this block from verses 25 onwards, that how do we have to live? Do not sin. When it talks about in your anger, do not sin. Yes, we all get angry, but there, what we see over there is having a righteous anger. What angers God should anger us also. Like if God is angry with sin, and the sin that is prevalent and the sin that is there, not in just others, we see always in the others, but in me, God, you should have a righteous anger for that. Now you should have, we see in Mark chapter 3, where people wanted to bring a man with a shriveled hand before Jesus just to test him, and where he is getting like very much annoyed at them because they are not bothered with the plight of that person who cannot work with his hand, but they just simply want him to be there so that they can test Jesus. He's very much angry about it. So what angers God, you should, that things also bring, like that is the kind of anger which God is expecting from us. Like, and when you say that do not let sun go down on you, sometimes we say that let us wait for the sun to go down and then only we will address this issue. No. Though sometimes when we should take, where we have to take things literally, we don't take it. And here, when we don't have to take things literally, it says like you do not have to wait till the sun go down, but like solve it as quickly as possible. It should not, there are few things that is written over there about anger, because when you keep it inside you, it feeds on it, and it will lead you into sin. So the anger should not be held inside. It should be dealt as soon as possible, and you should get away and deal with it and let it deal with the problem, and let it not be the field of Satan where he can work on those feelings where we are angry, and he can play with it at any time. So that is the meaning of that verse. Sorry to make you give you all the background information, but that will help you to understand that we have some standards. Righteous anger, what kind of anger, what angers God, and how to deal with anger. Don't let it breathe in, or to swallow it inside and keep it inside you, so that Satan can make use of it and make his playground to work on it, but deal with it as quickly as possible. That is the meaning of the verse.
Thank you, Justin. There are some more questions that have come, but we will give it a stop here. Probably we can address those questions in the coming week. Okay, so please do join in. The next week we would be, God willingly, taking in through the book of Revelation. How to understand the book of Revelation. Some of those, I know you would want to choose certain verses and ask us to tell the meaning. Probably all of it will not be happening through. But please do attend that to know how we can understand or how we can read the book of Revelation. Okay. Thank you so much for your time that you've given, Pastor Justin. May God bless you. Let's close with a word of prayer. Father Lord, we want to thank you for this time, and thank you for the opportunity that you've given us to understand your word, Master. This is extra efforts that you desire for us to take to know your word, to know the truth. Father, truth is always expensive. Lord, truth always needs more work. Lord, and to show the truth is where you have left the heaven and come down onto the earth. Oh Lord, enable all of us, Jesus, to study thy word in its true sense, Lord, to know what it is that you have enabled, you are wanting us to speak, oh Father, wanting us to hear, oh Father, through thy word. Thank you, Master, for doing so, and thank you for enabling your son to take the session. Bless him abundantly, that he may be able to be a channel of a blessing to many, many others, oh Father. Lead him through, giving you all glory, honor, and praise. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen. Amen. Thank you all for joining in. May God bless you all. I know we have short up like 12 minutes. We have another meeting also coming in. So thank you. Thank you for joining in. May God bless you all. Please inform others to join too. Right, our number has been coming down. It's just come to like 2-3 of us sitting in here. It's not too great. Please do encourage your friends also who are Christians to come in through this. And thank